everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Darian and today we're going to be talking about my favorite books from 2022. I am so excited to be making this video. I cannot believe 2022 is over, but I had a really great reading year in 2022. I'm gonna say 2022 so often in this video. But yeah, I had a really great reading year. I've heard from a lot of people that they didn't have a great reading year. I cannot relate. I've had so many 5-star reads in the past year. I don't remember exactly how many, but I had a lot of 5-star reads. So narrowing this list down, I did choose 10 books, but narrowing this list down was definitely difficult. I made a bunch of lists. I went back and forth about the order. Honestly, this order is not like set in stone or anything, but this is the order as of the day I'm filming this. But before we get into my top 10 books of 2022, we of course have to honor the honorable mentions, the other books that I loved in the past year that didn't quite make it to the top. All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. A moving tribute as always, but without further ado, let's get into my top 10 books of 2022. So right off the bat, I am going to say there are technically more than 10 books on this list, but I have reasons, okay? So coming in at number 10 is technically 2 books, but it's a series, okay? But that is Spy Family Volumes 1 and 2 by Tatsuya Endo. I started reading manga this year, not very much. I only read these 2 plus 1 volume of haiku, so like I wouldn't say I'm a manga reader yet, but I definitely want to start reading more manga in 2023. But enough about that. Let's talk about Spy Family. I loved this so much, especially, is this volume 1? No. Especially volume 1. When I read this, it was like the perfect time. I was not having a good day and I really just wanted to read something quick and easy, and this was the perfect thing to read when I was in a mood like that. It is just the most wholesome thing. This has the found family trope and you're gonna fall in love with this family. Like, you're following this guy named Twilight who is a secret agent, and for his next mission he basically needs to find this fake family. So he finds a wife and a daughter, they become a family, and they're all in it for their own needs, but none of them know about each other's secret identities except for the daughter, Anya, who can read people's minds. So she knows that her father is a secret agent and she knows that her mother is an assassin, but they don't know that she could read minds, and they also don't know about each other's identities. So it's just, it creates a lot of really funny situations and it's just so wholesome. The love that these people have for each other is so great. It also gets kind of violent at times, like, not gonna lie, but that's just because the wife, I can't remember her name, I forget her name, but the wife, she's a badass. We love her. So yeah, this kind of had to make my list, like just because it made me so happy, and I cannot wait to continue this series in the next year. Coming in at number 9 is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. This book just took over my life for a few weeks. It took me so long to read this because I was genuinely afraid of how much I was liking it. Like, I think I even texted Steph that, and I was like, this is scaring me how much I'm liking this, because I didn't want anything to go wrong, but of course things did, but not like in terms of my enjoyment, more just in terms of the circumstances of the plot. But you're following this character named Xingyan, who is the daughter of the moon goddess, and she is on a mission to rescue her mother. And I love Xingyan so much. She is such a badass, such a girl boss, and I really love, there is kind of a love triangle in this book, but I really loved that. I mean, for me personally, I didn't really know who she was gonna pick, and I liked both love interests for different reasons, so it wasn't like a situation where there was one obvious pick, at least for me. But I just really loved the writing in this book and the world building, and there's dragons, and I just loved it. It also has one of the most beautiful covers I've ever seen, which does not affect its place on this list, but it doesn't not affect this place on this list. But yeah, I highly recommend this if you love fantasy. If you love really slow books, it is definitely a slow book, but I just read it and enjoyed the ride, and I definitely want to reread it before I get to the second book, which just came out, because I feel like I need a refresher, because I feel like so much happened. But I just loved this book so much. It definitely exceeded my expectations, and I'm so excited to reread it and read a physical copy and tab it and finish the duology, and it's, oh god, it's gonna be so great. So yeah, love that book. So the next book on my list, coming in at number 8, is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is probably gonna be on almost every booktuber's list. This book took the book community by storm this year. This is the memoir written by Jeanette McCurdy, who was a Nickelodeon star. She was mostly known for playing Sam on iCarly, and I was obsessed with iCarly when I was younger. So when I found out that she was writing a book, not only that, when I found out the title of this book, I was so intrigued. I was so ready to read it, and I think I read it the day it came out. I listened to the audiobook, and it just did something to me, and I don't think I'll be able to put into words exactly what this book did to me. If you are one of the people who haven't picked this book up yet, definitely check the trigger warnings for this book. There are trigger warnings for parental abuse, sexual abuse, eating disorders. I know there's other things that I can't think of right now, but it's a very dark book. She's had a very tragic life so far, and it is mainly about the abuse that she endured from her mother, who is the one who got her into acting when she didn't necessarily want to do that. And it just makes you think so much about, like, especially me who watched her a lot when I was younger, it just made me think a lot about how I had absolutely no idea, obviously, that this was going on. And I think we as consumers kind of have a problem of like seeing actors and just celebrities in general as like objects that we like are obsessed with, you know, and we create these like parasocial relationships with them, but they're just human beings. And she was almost conditioned into this life of abuse and this toxic way of thinking about her body, about just her life in general. And the way that this book is told is very like matter of fact. Like, she doesn't go too much into like how she felt in the moment. She just kind of tells you the facts of what happened, and based on the circumstances of these facts, like, you know that they're horrible. But I don't know, I really liked the way she told this book. Also, the audiobook was definitely the way to go to read this, because she reads it herself, and just hearing her tell her own story, it was just great. I mean, it's hard to, like, I rated this book 5 stars. It feels weird to rate this book because it's such a personal story, but at the same time, I think it's just so raw and brave of her to tell her story, and I think it definitely deserves a place in my favorite reads of 2022. Okay, so this next book, I'm gonna be honest, I read this book way back in February, like the beginning of February, so it's been a long time since I read this, and I honestly don't remember it very well, but I do remember how much I loved this book, and that is The Chandler Legacies by Abdi Nazemian. I was obsessed with this book. For the longest time, it was my favorite book of the year, and then obviously a few other books dethroned it. But you're essentially following these group of students, and they go to this prestigious, I think it's a high school or maybe a college, I don't remember. I think there's 5 of them, right? Yeah, 5 of them. See, I don't remember much. So they go to this boarding school and they become members of this like very exclusive writing group called The Circle, and there are definitely like, I would definitely call this a dark academia book. It definitely has kind of like secret history, even like kind of Babel vibes, I would say. You're just following these group of teenagers, and a lot of them are queer. I think like 4 out of 5 of them are queer, so that's great, but they're also kind of slowly discovering the dark sides of their school and the system that the school is built upon, which is, you know, systems of abuse. And this definitely touches on themes of sexual abuse and abuses of power, and I just thought it was so well done. I cared so much about these characters, and it was the type of book that I don't think I realized how much I was loving it until I finished it, and I realized like how sad I was that it was over because I wouldn't get to spend any more time with these characters. And this was also like, I didn't see many people reading this book this year. I feel like Abdi Nazemian's other book, like A Love Story, was pretty popular when it came out, but this one I haven't seen many people talk about, so I definitely want more people to read this. It was just, I don't know, it has a special place in my heart. I definitely want to reread it, but I highly recommend it if you haven't picked this up yet. Coming in at number 6, I mean, we all knew this book was coming, The Romantic Agenda by Claire Kahn. Oh, this book means so much to me. I just can't help but smile when I talk about this book. So this is a romance following an asexual woman who is in her 30s, and she has been in love with her best friend for the past 10 years, and he has not reciprocated her feelings. And then she ends up going to this lake trip with her best friend, the woman he's interested in, and this woman's best friend, who's named Fox, and we love him. He's a grumpy boy, and we love that. And there is a little romance between Joy, the main character, and Fox, and there are so many great discussions about romance and asexuality in this book, and if you don't know, I'm asexual, and this book I can't. I was so excited when I found out about this book because this is the first romance I've ever read with an like explicitly stated asexual main character, and there was just so much of myself that I saw in Joy, based mainly about her asexuality, because she's a very extroverted and confident person. I am not that, but in terms of her asexuality, I saw a lot of myself in her, and a lot of what she talked about asexuality and about sex, like, it just resonated with me so much. And also the romance was just really sweet. I loved Fox so much. I did not like Malcolm, but that's fine. I just thought there were a lot of great discussions in this book about asexuality. Also, I loved because her best friend Malcolm is also asexual, and I find that there's not a lot of representation for male asexuals, so I love to see that as well. But again, if you haven't picked this book up, you know, there's nothing wrong with adult romance with not a lot of sex scenes, okay? I know like a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with adult romances with a lot of sex scenes, that's not what I'm saying, but I find a lot of people, like, they won't even try to read romances if there are no smut scenes in it. Sex repulsed asexuals exist, so I just really want people to give this a try and just expand your horizons, because I would love to see more books like this in the future. Okay, so we're down to my top 5. I would love to know, before I get into these books, if you have any idea what my top 5 are. Maybe leave them in the comments, I don't know. I have a feeling many people won't guess this book just because I don't think I've even talked about it on my channel yet. Also another book in my top 5 I don't think I've talked about on my channel yet. Some of these are very recent reads, so. But anyways, coming in at number 5, I'm so excited! Coming in at number 5 is Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn. I am so happy that I loved this book as much as I did. If you don't know, this is the sequel to Legendborn, which came out I think in 2020. That was one of my favorite books of that year. I think that also might have been number 5 of 2020. But I loved this book so much. I might have even liked it more than Legendborn. I decided to reread Legendborn before going into this one, so it was very fresh in my mind when I read this book. But Legendborn follows this girl named Bree who kind of stumbles upon this secret society at I can't remember the name of the school, but the school she's going to, and they are kind of the descendants of the Knights of the Round Table, so like Arthur and Lancelot and those people, you know. And she thinks that this secret society is somehow connected to her mother's death, which occurred a few months prior to the start of Legendborn. So she gets into a lot of shenanigans, and we're just picking up almost right where we left off in this book. And I loved this book so much. This book single-handedly turned me into a Selwyn Kane girly. I was 100% a Nick girly the first time I read Legendborn, and then when I reread it this time I was like, Selwyn Kane is making some points here. And then this book just kind of solidified that. I mean, he's on the cover. I love him so much. I don't know why I didn't like him as much in the first book, because he is the epitome of a grumpy boy, but I just loved where the story went. And like, I understand some people's complaints about this book. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil anything, but like, I really just trust Tracy Deonn with my life, and I truly trust where she's taking the story. I guess there were some characters I would have liked to see more of in this book, but at the same time, like, I was totally fine with everything that happened in this book. I mean, not emotionally. I wasn't emotionally fine. This ending, I want to cry just thinking about it, but it's fine. But yeah, I am just so happy. I love this so much, and I cannot wait for the third book to come out, whenever that will be. I don't think we even have a title for it yet. I'm just, oh, and I tabbed it. I mean, I tabbed most of these books, but I loved it so much. I'm so happy. If you haven't started the series yet, you need to get to it. It's so good. So good. Okay, so for number 4, it's technically 2 books, but like, I had to put them together because I refuse to pick which one I like more, but that is Book Lovers and Beach Read by Emily Henry. So Book Lovers was the first book that I read by Emily Henry. This is the art copy, by the way, and I didn't even read it until after the book came out because I'm a silly goose. But this was the first book I read by Emily Henry, and I read it at the perfect time. It was just so lovely and wonderful. Like, this is everything I want in a romance. It is about these 2 characters. I want to say Nora and Charlie. Oh, I'm amazing. Nora and Charlie. And Nora, I think, is an agent and Charlie is an editor. Yeah, I think Nora is an agent and Charlie is an editor, and they've worked together before. They didn't get off on the best foot, and now Nora goes with her sister to this small town that one of the books that she helped published is based off, and her sister's like obsessed with this book, and they run into Charlie there. It turns out he lives there, and a romance strikes up between them. And first of all, I mean, there's so much book talk, haha, in this book, which I obviously loved, but I just loved the romance in this book. I thought it was just so sweet. Charlie is yet another grumpy boy. I love the grumpy boys. If you don't know this by now, then I don't know where you've been, but I just thought they were so sweet, and I love Emily Henry's writing and her humor. And this book, like, they both of these books made me emotional, but this definitely made me emotional. In this book, you're following January and Augustus, and January is dealing with the recent loss of her father, but not only that, she also found out that her father had been cheating on her mom, so she's dealing with a lot of conflicting feelings about her father and that whole situation. She ends up going to this cabin that her father owned, and she's using it as a time to not only pack up his things, but to also take some time to write. She's going through a writer's block. Enter Augustus. He is a fellow writer, also going through a bit of a writer's block. They decide to switch genres. So she writes literary fiction, he tries to write romance, and they kind of take each other on these dates to help each other write their own genres, and romance ensues, obviously. And again, I love Emily Henry's writing style so much. She is so funny, but so earnest. And I read this like on the beach, because I was like, I'll read Beach Read on the beach. And there's one part of this book in particular, and it involves letters, okay? And I was reading this on the beach, and I was crying. Oh my god. This book really got me. So both of these, you cannot make me pick between these 2. I do think Beach Read might be the better written book, but I think I enjoyed Book Lovers more. So therefore, I am not picking one, and you can't make me. So yeah, if you haven't picked up Emily Henry's books, I highly recommend. As you saw, People We Meet on Vacation, I also gave that book 5 stars, but I didn't like it quite as much as these two, but that was definitely an honorable mention. But yeah, I just love I love her book so much. I'm so excited for Happy Place. I'm sure that'll be in my best books of 2023. But yeah. Okay, coming in at number 3, I have not talked about this book in a video yet because I read it I think at the end of November. So this book I kind of picked up randomly. I was just looking for an audiobook to listen to, and I knew this book was nominated for a couple Goodreads Choice Awards last year, and the synopsis kind of intrigued me. So I was like, what the heck, I'll just listen to this one. When I tell you, I was obsessed with this book. Obsessed. I ended up listening to the audiobook in 2 days because I just needed to keep reading and to know what happened. But that book is none other than The Measure by Nikki Erlich. Oh my god. This book is so good. It was nominated for Best Sci-Fi of 2022 and also Best Debut, and it didn't win either of them, which is a travesty. I think it deserves all the awards. It's so good. So this book, it's very light sci-fi. So when I say it's sci-fi, it's not like they're in space, you know, pew-pewing and stuff. You're in this like alternate world where everyone wakes up one day and there's just this box sitting at every person in the world's door, and people open their boxes and inside is a piece of string. They end up figuring out that the piece of string represents the length of their life, and so some people's strings are very short, some are very long, and so this obviously starts a panic because people who have short strings know that they probably don't have a lot of time left, but then people who have long strings know that they have ample time left. So it starts a lot of very interesting conversations, and you're following 8 different perspectives, and I was a little worried at first about having so many perspectives, but I think they're all balanced very well. I never got any of the characters confused. Also, all of the perspectives sort of intertwine in a way. You see how they're all related to each other. I found each story very interesting. Like, I guess I had a few favorites, but there was never, like, normally when I read books with multiple perspectives, there's at least one perspective that I don't like as much as the others. I didn't really have that with this book. I mean, there's one guy who I hated, but that's just because he was an awful person, but his story was very interesting, and it's just so, because it's like, what would happen, you know? It seemed like the author just kind of thought of every situation that would happen, and like, I'm trying not to spoil anything because I really think you should go into this book not knowing much, but like certain situations would come up as a result of these strings, and I'd be like, oh yeah, like obviously that would be a consequence of knowing exactly when you're gonna die, you know? So I just thought it was great, and there was like kind of, I wouldn't call it a reveal, but something happened at the end of the book that was just so it was so devastating. Oh my god, it's just so, if you've read this book, I need you to talk to me because I need to talk about this thing that happened at the end. I'm just like, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. Anyways, I'm gonna collect myself. But yeah, this book was just so amazing, and a debut. Like, what the heck? I cannot wait to read anything else this author writes because this book just blew my socks off. It was amazing. Go read it. Okay. Alright, so my top 2 books of the year. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone can guess what these 2 books are if you've watched literally any video on my channel this year, but I'm gonna tell you anyways. Also, these are very close, and they're also very different books. So it was kind of hard to pick between these two about like which book was my favorite, but when I get to number 1, I will explain why that's my favorite book of the year. But coming in at number 2, and also is probably on the top of everybody's list this year, is Babel by R.F. Kuang, obviously. Like, what can I even say about this book that people haven't said already? This book is just a masterpiece. Like, does it say a masterpiece? A masterpiece. It says it on the cover, so it must be true. But I really think it's best going into this book not knowing much, because the way this book just builds, the pacing of this book is incredible. It is so expertly done. The first half of this book is very slow, and when I was reading it, like, it was sitting at a 4 stars for me. I was like, okay, like, I'm liking it, but it is like, and I like slow books, but this was really slow, and I didn't think it was gonna pick up. But then the hits start coming and they don't stop coming. Like, oh my god, you're following, I should explain a little bit about what it's about, but you're following this character named Robin in the 1800s who was born in Canton, and he is an orphan. He is kind of adopted, I guess, by this man who is a professor at Oxford. So he brings Robin over to London and basically gets him to start studying translation so that he can go to Babel, which is like the translation department at Oxford. And Babel is just very revered. Like, the translation students are kind of put on a pedestal at Oxford. Everyone kind of sees them as like celebrities almost. And in his cohort, there are only 3 other students, so he forms a very interesting bond with these students. They kind of like love and hate each other. They spend a lot of time together, and so you're following a lot of his studies and the relationship between these 4 students. But there's also a bit of a magical element in this book, because in the process of translation they use these like silver bars. There's no way I can explain how the magic system works in this book, but trust me, it's great. Things just go from there. It is just so good. It's so good. Like, Rebecca's mind, I cannot believe her mind. She, like, what can I say? What can I say about this book? It just is such an, like, deep dive exploration of the history of education, of the power imbalances, again, within education. Like, there's nothing I could say that would explain this properly enough to get you to read this book. You just have to read it. You just gotta do it. And then just enjoy the ride. If you think the first half is too slow, I urge you to keep going, because once something happens in this book, like I said, it just doesn't stop. It doesn't quit. The ending will have you sobbing. It is just so masterfully done. Like, honestly, this is a feat of literature, in my opinion. I can see this becoming like a classic. Hundreds of years from now, people will still be reading this book. Like, it's just that good. I also wanted to show off the Fairy Loot edition that I have. Look at how pretty it is. And I haven't even read either of these copies because I got the arc of this book somehow. I read the ebook of it, and I can't wait to just read probably this copy and tab it. I'm gonna treasure these books for so long. Oh my god. Anyways, read Babel if you haven't, but everyone's already talked about it already, so I'm sure you've already read it. Okay, so finally, I'm gonna try not to cry while talking about this book, but I'm already getting emotional. But, I mean, we all know what this book is. My favorite book of the year is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I cannot put into words how much this book means to me. I read this yet again at the perfect time. If you don't know, which you probably do know because this book is very popular. I mean, it's been out, I think it came out in 2017. Let's fact check this. 2012! It came out in 2012. Okay, I didn't realize it had been that long, but it came out in 2012. It has been popular on BookTube for many years and is definitely like a very popular book on Book Talk, and for that reason I honestly didn't think I would like it as much as everyone else. I had a feeling I would enjoy it, but I was also nervous because I didn't like Cersei very much. But anyways, all that to say, I was pleasantly surprised about how this book just kind of gripped me and just meant so much to me. I read this during a week where I was going through a lot emotionally. I was dealing with a lot of grief, and this book was just very cathartic for me to read during that time. And I get so emotional just thinking about it. So if you don't know, this book follows Patroclus and Achilles, who are characters in the Iliad, and this is obviously a retelling of the Iliad, and in this story Achilles and Patroclus are in love, and Madeline Miller's writing is simply, it's next level. I want to find, there was a part of this book, I remember I was reading it and I was on Zoom with Lisa. Oh, I found it. And I read this paragraph and it just dug into my heart and sat on it, and I just burst into tears. And like, I don't even know how to explain why. It's just so so beautiful. So I'm gonna read it to you. It's not a spoiler, it's on page 49. Everyone get out your copies. It's on page 49. But I'm gonna read it to you and try not to cry, but I'm already getting emotional. So with no context, here is the passage. It says, "This feeling was different. I found myself grinning until my cheeks hurt, my scalp prickling till I thought it might lift off my head. My tongue ran away from me, giddy with freedom. This and this and this, I said to him. I did not have to fear that I spoke too much. I did not have to worry that I was too slender or too slow. This and this and this." I taught him how to skip stones, and he taught me how to carve wood. I could feel every nerve in my body, every brush of air against my skin. Like, I feel like out of context, it's gonna be like, okay, but yeah. I mean, I think this speaks for itself. Like, this book just means a lot to me. And I'm just very grateful that I had it when I did, and that I read it when I did, and I'm gonna be coming back to this book for the rest of my life, and it's just gonna be settle down, Darian. It's just gonna be a part of my life forever, and that's okay. That's all I have to say. Okay, so on that note, those are my favorite books. We've pulled ourselves together, but yeah, those are my favorite books of 2022. I definitely would love to hear what your favorite books of 2022 were. Let me know if we shared any of the same favorites, or if you hated any of these books. I don't know. Let me know all those fun things down in the comments. Stay tuned for my worst books of the year, which will be coming soon. There probably won't be as much crying in that one, unless it's just crying of anger and despair. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Bye!